Hi, everybody. Welcome to an introduction to human design. My name is Amanda Leonardo, and I will be teaching this workshop tonight. Human design, it will introduce you to a whole new way of looking at yourself. It's actually a pathway to recognize your conditioning and to further evolve. It's not a belief system. Its goal is to experiment with your design to find out your own personal truth and your own natural way of being in this world. And it can help you discover your special gifts, work around your limitations, and embrace and maximize your natural innate abilities. It'll help show your potential for growth, where you carry pain, and also where you're most vulnerable to conditioning. It's also a decision-making tool that teaches you how to be completely aligned within your body and know its natural knowing and state of being and how to make decisions so you can eliminate resistance in your life. And so I'm going to be going over the basic concepts of human design tonight because there's so many pathways to go in this and so much information. And at the end, I'm going to give you some resources where you can go further investigate for yourself and learn more about it. So just a little bit about my story. I actually found out about human design about 2 years ago, and I found out I was a reflector. Reflector is one of the types, and we're actually less than 1% of the population. Back then, 2 years ago, I don't believe that I was ready for it because when I found out, I didn't look into it. But then probably about a year and a half ago, it was about like 6 months after I discovered, it kept coming into my life very synchronistically. And I looked into it and it just completely blew my doors open when understanding more about myself and made so much sense for what has happened my entire life. And so some of the things that it's helped me with is it's helped me accept parts of myself I've been making myself wrong for. Astrology has done that big time too, but especially human design. The whole concept of human design is that we're living in a homogenized world and being conditioned to all be the same when we're not. You know, the leaders of the world have conditioned us to kind of adopt similar beliefs and similar ways of living and being, but when in reality, we're all completely unique. And it's helped me decondition things that I was blind to, that I couldn't see myself until I learned about parts of my design. It's given me a greater sense of peace and helped me to slow down in my life. And also help accept others more fully as themselves. It's amazing when you find out about people in your life and what their design is and understand how they're operating in the world. You can understand so much more about them too, and then respond and react to them differently. And it's helped me make decisions much easier, as well as help me understand my natal chart and the daily transits more clearly. So what is human design? Human design is a synthesis of science and 4 esoteric modalities. In terms of the science, it combines quantum physics, biochemistry, your genetics or DNA, and on the esoteric side, astrology, the Hindu chakra system, the Judaic Kabbalah, and the Chinese I Ching, or the Book of Changes. So how was it discovered? In 1987, a man by the name of Alan Krakauer was a Canadian living on the island of Ibiza, right off the coast of Spain. And he was overcome by what he calls the voice. For 8 days and 8 nights, he received all of this information about the human design system. And he emerged with the name Ra Uru Hu and the complete system of human design, just in a matter of 8 days. Coincidentally, so this happened in January of 1987, it happened at the same time of the death of a supernova, 1987A. And in that moment, when the death of that supernova happened, the Earth was fed more neutrinos than usual. And it was about 3 times more. We're being penetrated by these neutrinos 24/7, but for about 15 minutes when that happened, the Earth was fed about 3 times more. So what are neutrinos? Neutrinos are subatomic particles, also can be known as the breath of the stars. And most of them come from the sun. About actually 70% of the Earth is being fed neutrinos from the sun. And then all of the rest of the planets and the stars and everything else in the universe. And so in 1987, when he emerged with this information, he spoke of this then, and that neutrinos actually have a tiny bit of mass to them, when science was mostly saying they were just energy. And now in recent years, it's actually been proven by science that they do contain mass. And so this is how humanity is imprinted with the archetypes of the planets and the stars, and is the entire basis of the human design system. Each single planet impacts the flow of neutrinos. And of course, being astrologers, we all know, we're being imprinted with these archetypes, and the human design system and also quantum physics is what is starting to explain all of this. So the voice told Ra that in 1781, humanity shifted from a 7-centered to a 9-centered being. So everybody recognizes that picture on the left. It's our typical 7-chakra system in our body. But the picture on the right is the body graph in human design. And the voice said that we actually have 9 centers, and that we started moving from a very strategic way of being to becoming more receptive. So moving from strategic and focused and doing to more receptive. And this in 1781, I'm sure most of you know that this correlates to one of our great planetary discoveries, when Uranus was discovered. So there's another synchronicity there too. And so the voice said that the universe was not born during the Big Bang, that it was just its conception, and that it is still in the process, as we're all living here today, of being born. And that all forms of life, including anything inanimate, contain what he called, or the voice called, crystals of consciousness. And they're not actually crystals, but are the term used to best describe the concept. And these crystals are actually teeny tiny fragments from the beginnings of our universe, or essentially fragments of dark matter. And in humans, the design crystal is in the ajna center. You can see it right there in the middle, the one with the red pointing. And the design crystal is what manifests or creates your body and your biology. The personality crystal is in the head, and it's called into the body about 88 days before birth, and manifests who you think you are, or your conscious self, or your personality. And lastly is the magnetic monopole, which is actually a magnet with only one pole, and it does a few things. One, it holds together the illusion of separateness as human beings. We all hear we're spiritual beings having a human experience. Well, this is what holds together that illusion of separateness, that we are all individual. But it also guides us to our destiny and moves us in our direction. And so a great way of understanding this is to imagine a limousine. And take our design as the limo. It's the vehicle, it's our body. The personality is sitting there in the back, and it's just the passenger. And the driver of the limo is the magnetic monopole. So when you look at these all together, and our personality, which is generally who in our waking conscious state is who's running the show. We think, we do, we feel, we experience all these things consciously. That's our personality. But the personality is only meant to be the passenger. It's not meant to be doing anything. It's meant to be observing. It's meant to be learning. It's meant to be witnessing, to be enjoying the ride, and to not be in control. But we know what happens in our life is that personality part of us, that has been conditioned all of these years, is the one that tries to do the driving. It tries to do the controlling and tries to take us in our direction. And so this is called Rave Mandala. And I'm using Sue's chart here as an example. This is Sue. She is a generator. And this is what's also called the Rave Bodygraph in the center. I'm just going to actually go through the pieces here right now so you understand, because it looks way complicated, but once you see all the pieces together, you all know what that center wheel is. You see all of the signs of the zodiac in there. Around the outside of that, you'll see all of those numbers. those numbers correlate to the 64 hexagrams in the I Ching. And on the outside of those are the actual representations of those hexagrams. In human design, they're not called hexagrams, they're actually called gates. Just to give you a little briefing on the I Ching, its origin dates back to over 5,000 years ago, and it's a divination practice for centuries across the Far East. And it's used in human design to understand our genetic imprinting and how it translates into the body graph. And here's another crazy thing about the I Ching and human design. So there's 64 hexagrams. There's 6 lines per hexagram. Now our DNA has 64 codons, and there are 6 groups of amino acids per codon. So coincidence? And there's a lot more that you can dive into with information in human design, but I'm just going to leave it at that. There's so many synchronistic things with science and human design. It's so unbelievable. And so each hexagram covers a space of 5 degrees, 37 minutes, and 30 seconds along the mandala. So not only do the neutrinos from the planets pass through the signs of the zodiac, but we're also receiving imprinting from the archetypes of the hexagrams. So you're doubly getting, information imprinted there. And the gates never change around around the zodiac. Each gate. So if you look at the very top, you'll see like 10 and 11. You'll see. Take gate 10 is always going to be in Capricorn, just on the edge of Sagittarius there. Gate 11 is only in Sagittarius. And if you look further in, you can see where the planets were aligned when Sue was born. But you'll see double planets. So the black planets are the moment that Sue was born, and the red planets were the moment 88 days before she was born, which is called the design. So not only are you getting imprinting from the planets in your natal chart on the day you were born, but also 88 days. And the design is actually your unconscious tendencies. But I'll go into that in a little bit. So let's just take a look really quick at the body graph. I'm sure most of you pulled your charts already for human design before we got started here today to see what definitions you have. But you can see the 9 centers if you look on the left there. Right now they're all colored in and they're all defined just to show you what they look like. The gates at the either end of each channel, which the channels are all the red lines, the gates at the end of each channel are numbered, and they represent the 64 gates of the I Ching, again, just translated into the body graph. And again, those numbers never change. They're always in there. So if you look at the top in the head, you've got 64, 61, and 63, and they're always there, and that doesn't change. So if you had a planet in gate 64 when you were born, it's going to define that gate there. And the channels, there are 36 channels in the chart and 2 gates per channel. And when you have planets in each channel connecting, that's what creates definition in your chart, and that's what colors in the centers on either end. Each channel and gate has a name and description, and they're called keynotes. And the keynotes are what help you to understand your stories, patterns, behaviors, and life experiences. Basically, it's the same as what the archetypes of the planets represent. Each gate has its own archetype. And then when the 2 gates connect and are defined, that channel has its own archetype. Archetype. So let's take a look at Sue with her design and her personality. So on the right is based on the personality crystal, which, again, is creating her conscious patterns, and it's represented by the black in the chart. And the design creates your pre-natal body imprint and unconscious patterns, represented by the red in the chart. And what human design is saying is that we're a binary consciousness with 2 sets of planetary imprinting and 26 activations in our chart. And so if you look at your own chart, you can see it now too. On the left will be all of your unconscious imprinting, and on the right will be all of the planets that you already know because you've already seen your chart. And just wanted to show once again Sue, fully designed with all of her personality and unconscious patterns there. Does anybody have any questions so far? Am I moving too fast? Are you all good?
You are amazing.
Okay. Thank you, Don. Okay, so on to the 9 centers, because now we have 9. We don't have 7 anymore. There are 5 different kinds of centers, and I'm going to just run through them really quickly. So we have 2 pressure centers. We've got the head and we've got the root. And these are called pressure centers because what they do is they create all of our experiences that begin a process, whether either mental in the head or physical in the root and the body. And they create that pressure to get the energy moving. And so the head is all about questions and looking for inspiration, while the root is about that kundalini energy, that primal energy. It's about drive, it's about stamina. So then there are 4 motor centers, which are the sacral, the heart, the solar plexus, and again, the root. So the root is doubly, it's a pressure center and it's also a motor center. And the motor centers are all about centers that produce fields of energy. So the heart is also actually called the ego center, and it's not in the same placement in our body where we're used to seeing the heart. It's actually, just for reference purposes, placed a little over there to the right. And the heart is all about your willpower. The sacral is the power of fertility, creation. It's a response center. It's the generator capacity. If you're a generator, your sacral center is going to be defined, and that's actually what defines the type as a generator. It's this force of creation. And the solar plexus is all about your emotional intelligence, the waves of emotion, and producing them and transmitting them. And again, the root, that adrenalized pressure and drive. So it's pressured energy, and it's also producing or creating or generating energy. Then we have our 3 awareness centers: the splenic center, the solar plexus, which again, it's a motor center, but it's also an awareness center. And the 3rd awareness center is the ajna center, up there right at the 3rd eye. And the awareness centers are all about just awareness. The spleen is about survival. It's about patterns that can be improved, and where we can provide solutions to things. But it also holds a lot of fear because it's that survival instinct. So it's the oldest center we've ever had. It's that primal knowing or not knowing. It engages very much with the 5 senses. The solar plexus is all about your emotional awareness. So in doing both and in being both a motor and awareness, it's the emotional energy and it's also the emotional awareness. And it's also about developing spiritual consciousness. And then the ajna center is all about mental consciousness. It's about processing thoughts. It's about detecting patterns, thinking, conceptualizing, taking the thoughts that come in through the head and then making them into something. So our next center is the throat center, and that is the only manifestation center. And it's all about communication and manifestation. It's about being able to make an impact in the world through communicating, whether it's through words, whether it's through body expression. So many dancers communicate their feelings through dance, and that's actually generated from the throat because it's a communication mechanism. It's about manifesting things into form and producing things. And then you have the one identity center, which is the G center. And that's one of the newer centers also. And the G center is where the magnetic monopole resides. So this center is all about direction. It's all about love as well, love and direction, because love is the guiding force in the universe. If you have the G center defined in your chart, you have a consistent and reliable sense of direction in your life. You know the role that you're here to play for others. Whereas if it's open, if it's not defined in your chart, you're able to express or take on different kinds of identities in different kinds of ways. It's about being flexible in your direction in life. So let's talk about definition a little bit more then. Definition is the core of who you are. When 2 planets inhabit gates that form a channel, the definition is created. And once all of the planets are placed in your graph, you know your definition, and that's how your type is determined. It's where you can find your reliable decision-making process. It's a fixed and permanent part of us that we're meant to express outwardly as a transmitter in this world. And it's always something that's alive and operating. It's energy that's available 24/7. And it's basically aspects of your personality that are very consistent. No definition. This is where your body acts as a receiver to the environment and from the daily transits. It's very inconsistent and unreliable. And it's our greatest source of pain, but also greatest source of wisdom. Because what happens is, and being a reflector, when you'll see my chart at the end, I have nothing defined. That's what makes the reflector unique. It's the greatest source of pain, excuse me. It's the greatest source of pain. It's because our having no definition is where we receive all of our conditioning from the outside. But the reason why it can also be our greatest source of wisdom is because when you do not identify with that conditioning, you're just taking in information and learning from it and not identifying with it. And it's where you, the last point where you receive conditioning and the greatest potential to become the not self. So human design talks about the not self. Basically, it's the conditioned self. It's what all of us are striving to decondition from, the not self. You know, from the time we're born up until we're 7 years old, we are learning everything from our environment, from our parents, from society, and that's how our conditioning takes place. And so the problem is that we can try to live out and operate from our centers that don't have any definition. And you're trying to be what you're not, which is caused by that conditioning. The undefined centers are actually consistently changing and being influenced by different environments. They're being influenced by other people's defined gates, by other people's defined centers, by the planets, by society, by things that you hear, all of that. And again, as you look up your family or friends' charts, you'll see where they have defined centers where you don't. And that's what you're receiving and learning from them. And opposites attract. Generally, you'll never come into contact with somebody that is exactly like you. And a lot of times, if you look up your very close family and friends' charts, you'll see that you have definition where they don't and vice versa. And that you have a gate. So you say you have a center here that's defined and you've got a gate. And they have a center here that's defined and they have the matching gate to that to connect that channel. You're bringing them into your life to learn that piece from them. And likewise, they're bringing you into their life to learn that from them. And so authority, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead too fast. Hang on, let's go back here. Definition can also be called the student. If you have definition, that's where you are the student. And the undefined centers can also be the metaphors that they're the school. That's where the learning takes place. Okay, now we can move on. So authority. I just want to do a time check here really fast. Okay, cool. Authority. Our body has this innate built-in ability to correctly make decisions for us according to our design. Authority is the decision-making tool from deep within your body. It gets you out of your head when it comes to making decisions. And I know that that's a difficult piece for most of us here, especially when we're on the path of awakening, is we start to observe ourselves and start to understand ourselves, but then we get so confused with making decisions and we still keep on coming up in resistance. But the mind is not here to make decisions. It's the body that's here to make the decisions. And depending on your definition is what determines your authority. So going back to the 9 centers, the authority is determined by what centers that you have defined, and there's a hierarchy. So if you have your solar plexus defined, that is it. That is your authority, solar plexus. About 50% of the population has their solar plexus defined, And the key to making decisions, if you have solar plexus authority, is to wait out your emotional wave. It's to be patient. It's to take time. It's to experience the high of the decision making process and experience the low. This is feeling really good today. Oh, but now, an hour later, it's not feeling so good. It's always best to sleep on the decision or wait as long as you can. The more time, the better. And eventually the decision becomes clearer and clearer. It's about letting the decision reveal itself over time when you're defined by your solar plexus. Number 2 is the sacral, and this is all of the generators, but the generator can also have, if the generator has both the sacral and solar plexus defined, you're living by, and the authority is your solar plexus. So if you have your sacral defined, but not your solar plexus, which is about 32% of the population, this is all about a gut reaction. It's all about responding to the decision. It's about listening to that gut sacral primal voice that is known as like uh-huh or like a firm yes or a no. If it's a maybe, if there's no feeling there that's a firm yes or a no, it means the time isn't right to make that decision. And just a little tip for anybody who has generators in your life is to ask them tons of yes or no questions. I actually started practicing that with my roommates, with my glass group. They were all either generators or manifesting generators. And, letting them fall into that response by not letting them come to me, but letting them respond to me with that yes or no. Sometimes that feeling is very loud. Sometimes it's more subtle. In my own personal experience with my own body and awakening, I know that I can feel into, I'm not a generator, but in terms of getting that guidance from my body, I'm way more in tune with when it's subtle or when it's a really loud, like knowing like yes or no. And again, it's all about practice and experimenting with your design. So number 3 is the splenic center. So if you have the spleen defined, but no sacral and no solar plexus, this is your authority. And this is all about a knowing, a listening, or a feeling or sense of something, and an immediate, in the moment alert that is your decision. It's because, again, the spleen is very primal. It uses the senses, and it's completely in the moment. So it's either yes or no. It's knowing the thing that you want to do, knowing what the decision is. And number 4 would be the heart or the ego center. And this is all about using your own personal will to make decisions. It's what you need to do is ask yourself, what's in it for me? Or what do I want out of this? Either I have the will to do this thing that I'm deciding to do, or I don't. Next up is the G center. And this is all about operating from your own personal self-satisfaction. It can only be defined to the throat. And you need to make decisions based on what makes you happy. So you can ask yourself the question, will this make me happy? Or will this bring me fulfillment? Number 6 is outer authority or no inner authority, or sometimes called outer environment authority, which means that you have no definition below your throat. One of the 3, you can have all 3 centers defined, or just one of them, or just 2, any combination, but nothing below the throat is defined. So this would be the projector type. And this is all about getting to know the energy of the other and the environment. You receive all of your guidance from the environment and understand your own awareness as you talk through things with others. And it's all about relating to the other person. And finally, the lunar authority or moon authority, which is only reflectors. And this is all about waiting 28 days for a moon cycle. And again, it's only the reflector type, and it's because our definition comes and goes. We have no solid definition, and we're only defined by either the people who enter our aura or the transits. And the whole concept about waiting for the moon cycle is that the moon moves the fastest through all 64 gates. It takes about 28.5 days to move through the zodiac, right? And so the moon will tell us who we're being through that each gate. And on a personal note, what I've started to do is experiment. Since August, I journal every single day. I write down the gate that the moon is in every single day. And I write down my life experiences and how I'm feeling. And it's becoming very, very true for me. I go back and I look, and I'm looking, like, especially if I'm having a very difficult day, I will go back and I'll say, oh, the moon is in this gate today. Let's go see what happened last month and the month before and the month before. And sure enough, I'm having the same sort of experiences and the same emotional feelings in my life. It's absolutely fascinating. So the other key piece for reflectors, and also for people who have outer authority, is to use other people as sounding boards when making that decision. And it's not to get advice from anybody else. No. It's all about hearing yourself speak about the decision that you want to make, so that you can hear yourself more clearly, that the process isn't all happening inside. It's all about kind of expressing what's going on. And finally, moving on to the energy types and the strategies. So here are the 4 types. And these pictures actually represent the colored in pieces are the aura of each type, because the aura is what determines the type that you are. And when you know your type, you know your strategy. And what that means is when you follow your strategy, it means you're going to follow a way of being in the world without meeting resistance. And it's also a way of letting go of comparing and accepting yourself as you are. And so there are 4 different types, each with their own strategy to follow and live in that natural flow of life. So starting with the manifester, this is Diana. Diana is our manifester in the group. Manifestors make up about 9% of our population, and their energy is defined by the throat center connected to a motor center with no sacral definition. So you can see there, her throat center is defined right to her solar plexus, which is the motor. So that's what defines her as the manifester with no sacral. And the manifestors in the past in history were the great kings and queens and rulers in our society, because they were the only pure doers. They don't have to wait for anything to come to them in order to start. Yet their reign started to come to an end in that year 1781, when we started to move to nine-centered beings. And the manifestor's gift in this world is that they're here to initiate action and have an impact on others. But the problem is that their aura is closed and repelling. And that's not a bad thing, but if they're not living by their strategy and authority, they can push others away, resulting in their not self theme of anger. So every type has a not self theme, which is basically how the greatest, I would say it's the greatest emotion that you're feeling when you're living in resistance to life. But if they live their strategy of informing others, they will experience peace. So the strategy of informing others, basically what that means is that you're designed to always tell people what you're going to do before you do it. Don't ever do anything or take an action until you speak and let the people know who are going to have an impact. To let them know the potential impact, because you're such a powerful force and you have that aura that's this repelling out. It's the manifesting, it's starting things. It's like the go aura, that people can feel repelled by that if they don't understand where you're coming from. And so that's why the strategy to inform is like a respectful announcement of what you're here to initiate. Now, the issue is that informing doesn't come naturally to manifestors. So that's what you really need to work on. But once they make a decision, they do move fast, and it helps to make a list of people who you're going to potentially affect. For example, leaving a job. Make a list of all of the people that you're going to impact or affect, and then make sure that you tell them before you actually make the decision to do it. And again, when a manifestor is experiencing peace, they aren't meeting with resistance, and that's how they know that they're living in their natural state of being. moving on to our generators. This is Sue. We saw her chart earlier, but here she is again. She's what's called a pure generator. Some actually say that generators and manifesting generators are two different types, but that's not the case. Again, because type is actually defined by your aura, and they have the same aura, which is open and enveloping. All generators are energy beings and designed to generate a life force available to build and master things, and to put all of this sacral energy to work. But the differences are, for example, a pure generator, they're about 36% of the population. The energy, again, is defined by the sacral, but no definition with the throat to a motor center. So you can see here, Sue, her throat is defined, but it's defined to the spleen, which is not a motor center, which makes her a pure generator. And they have a very opening and enveloping aura because their strategy is to respond to what comes to them. So it's like they're sucking the environment into them, or people around them, or it's like they're waiting for things to respond to come to them so that they can give a response and put their energy to work. But generators do have this need to feel like they need to initiate, like manifestors, because they've got so much energy flowing through them, and it's like they don't know what to do with it. It's like, I want to go, I want to do, I want to start. But the key is to actually respond, and that can be a response to people, to, signs in your life, to things. So for example, say I'm a generator and I have this idea of going on a vacation. That idea is great. It came to me, but I want to wait to respond to something that's going to initiate me into that. So, and that could be from a person saying something about traveling somewhere or inviting you to go somewhere, or it could be as simple as seeing, an ad for a cruise and then going and taking the cruise, but it's always to respond to something. And the not self theme is frustration. When you are the one initiating and not, living by your strategy and authority, you'll experience great frustration in life. But when you are living in it and responding, you become very satisfied with the work you're doing. You're able to generate and use your energy in a way that's aligned with your body, where you'll be able to complete work that you started because you weren't the one to initiate it, because you were the one to respond to it. And so pure generators are actually just here to take their energy and just go and build and create and go and go. And they're designed to perfect one step at a time towards mastery, and to basically master that sacral energy through response. So that's Sue. Here's Wei. I just threw Wei's chart in here too, so you can see the differences in our generators. She's got no definition to her throat, but she's got that sacral defined. And here's Carolyn as well. So she's got a lot of the lower centers defined there, but nothing in the upper centers. And so here's Olive, our manifesting generator in the group. And you can see right there, her throat is defined to the heart. And that's what makes her a manifesting generator. And so manifesting generators are about 30% of the population. So together, when you take in the 30 and the 35, about 65% of our population are these creative forces of generators. And, the difference between the manifesting generator and the generator, again, is that throat connected to the motor. But again, same not self-theme, frustration, same aura, same strategy, and same goal. Now, the manifesting generator's focus is efficiency of use of energy, not on the process like generators. It's about knowing the ability to master something and how efficiently you're able to use that energy, because with the throat defined to the motor, your innate need is to start things and go and go and go and start and go and start and go. So you're wanting to start so many things, but you're not designed to. Again, you're designed to wait to respond. So you can have a tendency to when you are in that go mode, to skip a lot of steps because of all that force coming from the throat, the manifestation center. And so you're all about mastering the efficiency of using that manifested energy through the response of the sacral. And so a good metaphor for the differences between a manifesting generator and generator are the tortoise and the hare. So the generator would represent the tortoise, who just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes and goes, doesn't care when he's going to make it, but ends up getting to the finish line. But the hare wants to go super, super fast and take shortcuts and take naps and do it, try to do it efficiently, but ends up falling behind because he's just trying to go and go and go. I hope that makes sense. Cool. Let's see. But both generators and manifesting generators, life force it's your life force is pulling things towards you from that sacral and that open aura. And so you just have to let that response happen through the sacral and envelop others. Take them into your field. So those are generators, manifesting generators. On to projectors, and here is the lovely Dawn. And actually she's a great example of seeing so much definition in a chart, but she's not defined in the sacral, so that doesn't make her a generator or manifesting generator, and her throat isn't connected to a motor, so she's not a manifester. And this is how she's a projector here. Projectors are 22% of the population and have no sacral definition and no definition from the throat to a motor. And the projectors are the ones who have been, since that date in 1781, have been replacing the manifestors in our society and are becoming the great leaders and guides. Basically, the projector's role here is to guide humanity. They're one of two non-energy types, as they don't have a reliable means of manifesting or generating energy. And so their role here is just to guide and direct, guide and direct, guide and direct. A projector's aura is focused and absorbing, taking in a lot of the environment from others, from the people you're around, and again, from the transits. And it's all about interaction with the other and being that force to guide us in this world. Their openness is best used to read the energy of others so that they do know how to guide them. But their strategy is to wait for the invitation. Otherwise, they end up with a not-self theme in bitterness. And waiting for that invitation is basically waiting to be acknowledged by the other and appreciated by the other. So the other is seeing your special gifts, but not initiating, not convincing people. I'm sure the projectors in the group have experienced some, seeing or understanding what a person needs to do to take themselves in a direction in their life. But if you're the one who's telling them this, they're not going to hear you unless you're invited in for your opinion, your advice, or whatever it may be, your guidance. And when this happens, when you initiate these, conversations or actions without being invited, you sometimes end up bitter. You have to wait for everything to come together and be very selective too of what you're taking in, because your aura is so focused and absorbing of others. You're really here. Part of your role is here to know the other as well. I believe that projectors are very much probably all of you are empaths. I mean, the reflector is the ultimate empath, but projectors as well. It's very easy for you to understand and experience other people. And when projectors do wait for that invitation, that's when others can finally see them, can finally appreciate them for their gifts. So it's all about patience and waiting. And what projectors teach us in the world is recognition, and really teach us to see each other as well. And so finally is the reflector. So this is me. This is my chart. No definition, all totally open. The reflector, we are 1% of the population. Our energy is no definition. And we are the other non-energy type. And the role of the reflector is just as it sounds. It's to reflect the environment around them. And how perfect is that to go along with the moon cycle? If the moon is just a reflection of the sun, of the, when we see that moon, it's reflecting the sun, it's reflecting the energy. If we're getting 70% of the neutrinos from the sun, it's a pure reflection of that consciousness. And we're designed to reflect the environment around us because there are no centers defined. We're taking in everything from our environment. It's also said that we are most in tune with the daily transits as well. Because we're so open, and when the planets are moving through the different gates, interacting, not interacting with our open centers, we're always experiencing those archetypes most purely and clearly. Our aura is resistant and sampling. So what we're taking in is only sampled and then released. So what that means is it's not absorbing like the projector. It's resistant, meaning it's like, and the way I experience it's interesting because I'll know I'm a hypnotherapist and I do deep emotional work with my clients. And I know like there are so many healers out there that need to do a lot of clearing energy, a lot of visualization, or crystals, saging, and I do a lot of that. I do that occasionally, but for the most part, when I'm done with a client, even if they've experienced this and I've felt their emotions too, I can walk away from that session feeling fine. Not sometimes I'll feel a little exhausted depending on how much work I'm doing. But I really believe that that's part of my aura, this resistant and sampling aura. We're meant to sample in the environment, take it in, understand it, collect wisdom, gather knowledge, and then let it go. The key that I found is to observe the energy with not attaching to it. I've realized my whole life that I was actually very empathic, and I kind of shut it all down as a child. I was a very fearful child, and all sorts of stories about shutting all that stuff down in my life. But as I've begun waking up and I started meditating and started getting to know my body and myself more, I really noticed that it's all about observing the energy without identifying with it. When I'm feeling an emotion, checking in with myself, see, am I feeling that? Or is it because I'm standing next to this person right now who I know very well, it always feels like this. And when we're not living by our design, we experience the not self theme of disappointment. And just to give you another example of how true this has become for me, before I discovered human design, I was working with my own hypnotherapist, and we were really getting down to some deep core stuff. And when I came through it and I got to this core thing, it was like, I'm disappointed with my life and everybody in my life right now. And it was all about this theme of disappointment. And then when I found out about the reflector, I'm like, this makes so much sense. And again, the reason why we wait for the lunar cycle, our strategy, it's not just our authority, but it's our strategy too, is to wait that lunar cycle so that we can experience every single state of our being through every archetype and know ourselves. And in terms of making the decision and waiting, I've also had, there are some things that have happened in my life since I started studying human design that I simply couldn't wait the 28 days for, like taking a job. Like I couldn't say, hey, I need to wait 28 days to make that decision, but I believe that, and I keep asking to be guided to experiences to allow me to wait for that moon cycle to make decisions. And I do have experiences where I had a decision that needed to be weighed, and I said, yes, I can wait for it. And either the decision made itself before the 28 days was up and was a very clear no, like immediate no, or I was able to wait through that cycle. For example, many of you know I changed my name back in the fall. That had come to me in September. And I said, I went from my nickname Mandy to being called Amanda. And it came to me very intuitively, but I said, I'm going to wait the full moon cycle. And so I waited, and I started talking to people about it. and people would light up when I said, hey, I'm thinking about going, to Amanda. And I tell them my reasons, but just hearing myself, and it actually took about 2 months to make that decision. It wasn't just the 28 days, because at the end of that 28 days, it's still, the decision wasn't there. But when it came to me after about 2 months, it was so spot on. And it was like, yes, this is it. And the other thing about knowing and understanding human design from the reflector perspective is my entire life, I've always felt so rushed to make decisions. And especially for all of you solar plexus authority people, that knowing that you can wait to make the decision, and you don't have to make it in the moment, and you can allow and feel out your emotional wave. Or, for projectors who have that outer authority, can wait, can talk to people, that just waiting and not feeling rushed has completely changed my life. And I'm so grateful for it. And the goal of surprise, that's been coming to me in these past few years. My nickname is Magic, and I always feel like when I'm in the flow, I'm living that like super happy, magical, surprise filled awareness in life. So that is the end of my presentation, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it, and I wanted to give you some resources because, again, this is just the tip of the iceberg, knowing these basic things about human design. The official human design site is Jovian Archive, and that's where you can pull your chart. And also there's tons of free audios on there. There are paid audios. And IHDS is the International Human Design School. I've actually taken a few courses on there already, and I'm probably going to keep going and taking some more because it's just really helping me to dive deeper. They have more free audios on there as well. My Bodygraph is the best resource for you to be able to actually pull your mandala without having to download the software. So you can see the mandala with all of the planets aligned. And then the best book is the definitive book of human design that you can get at, I think it's the International Human Design School. And what I'd like to propose in terms of the astrology piece of this is I'd love to encourage you to pull your chart at that 88-day mark before you were born and see what your natal chart looks like, to look at the unconscious patterns, and would love to start a conversation about that in one of our groups, and maybe even for the next, if we do another human design talk, we can talk more about that. So does anybody have any questions?
That was fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
I do have a question. Can you go back and show me my chart? This is Wendy.
Yeah, Wendy.
I just want to see it, if it was different than...
Oh, yeah. Did I move past you? I moved past you quickly, I think, didn't I? Yeah, so your authority is that G-center authority. It's all about yourself. Make decisions that make you feel happy, that are gonna, really tune into that feeling of fulfillment in terms of making your decision. Did anything I spoke of regarding the projector make sense for you?
Yeah, I had looked it up before, and I had looked into human design several years back, but I didn't really understand it. The way you have laid this out is really helpful.
Oh, good.
So I kind of took it like, oh my God, I'm bitter. And, I didn't understand it.
Well, and there's also, there's a lot of people, so I'm not certified at all. So I'm not claiming to be a certified, there's incredible certified analysts that know, but just the fact there's a lot of misinformation out there for human design too. Especially, and a lot of what I'm finding, especially as a reflector, a lot of disempowerment and people living in this victim mode in terms of human design. And I feel like this can be very empowering when you know that those, especially as a projector, and you have a lot of open centers, and that you take in so much from the other, is just becoming more aware of that. Is this me or is this them?
Oh yeah. I'm full. I have to do that constantly. When I'm interacting, especially now with all the Neptune and, Pisces energy, I'm like, oh God, I'm feeling really revved up. And I had just been talking to this person or whatever. And I'm like, that is not me. That's them. And I just had to step out of their field because I'm still in it somehow.
Mm,
And when I do that, then I'm like, so a lot of definition that way.
mm. I find especially manifesting generators are the ones where I get most caught up in them. For some
Huh.
reason, they're just so, it's like there's so much go to them and so much energy. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
in my last home, I lived with one generator and two manifesting generators. And there was one where it was like, there was just, I felt myself getting caught up in so much of it. So it
Yeah.
becomes a practice,
Amanda, it's Sue.
Hi, Sue.
Hi. I had come at human design from a different perspective, and
Okay.
your explanation and the mandala, I guess you called it, with the degrees, I had never seen before, and that I find very interesting, and I want to pursue that even more. There are so many ways of looking at this.
Mm-hmm.
Is just interesting. So what I found really fascinating is reading about each one of the gates.
Yep.
And then the pathways that connect, and then with people that where you have one and another person has the other one, and how I just noticed that a friend of mine introduced me to a book, and we discovered a book about human design, and we discovered that we had one of those pathways defined between the two of us. So it's fascinating.
Interesting, right? Yeah. And I like, especially like the Pluto, like my Pluto is in gate 48, and it's just gate 48 is all about the fear of like not being like, of not having the skills to make your way in this world. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so me. And then it connects it. So you have the channel defined. If you look all the way to the left, the gate 48 is in that top left corner of the spleen, and you've got it defined to the 16. And the 16 is actually called the gate of skills. And what I watch when I bring people into my life with that 16, because it's so, even though, so 48 is also, it's like, it's positive attribute is the gate of depth. I have a lot of depth, but it's all about the worry that this depth and this knowledge is not going to be able to put to use throughout my skills. And that has been a theme my entire life. And that's where my Pluto is. And so I literally like look at people who come into my world with that gate 16, and I pay attention. I watch them, or like, especially I feel like, those of us who don't have the G center defined, that's huge for all of us. I don't care what design you are, but when you're feeling like you don't have like direction in life, or that's the center of love, it's our connection, it's the magnetic monopole, that when I bring somebody into my world who has a G center defined, I pay attention to where they're guiding me, or how they're guiding themselves, or to their direction. And like, I kind of like feel like I suck in and like assimilate that energy of what's it like to be somebody that knows what their direction is, and always knows who they are. That makes sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I don't have the root.
Yeah, that's your only thing not defined.
The only thing that isn't defined. And I had to laugh when I read what it was all about, was having other people my interpretation is getting annoyed at having to live on other people's schedules. Because
it makes so much sense.
Yeah, it seems like I have always been pushed to like in my professional life, I was always living on other people's schedules. And especially working in IT, it was like I always wanted to do the job right and get it done on my schedule, but we were always schedule driven, and it was hard for me to do that.
Fascinating.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
Could you look at mine again, please, Amanda? It's Carolyn.
Yeah. There you are.
Okay, so Do I have no throat?
No, you have no throat definition, so you're a pure generator because that sacral center, see that center one in the red is defined?
Okay.
But you have no throat definition, so you're a generator.
Okay, that makes sense. Great.
It just means that you need somebody else to bring that out, right, Amanda?
What, the energy?
The fact that she doesn't have it defined doesn't mean that she doesn't have that ability, but
Exactly. It means when it's not defined, it just means that it's not consistent. It's not like the manifestation, the communication in your life isn't always consistent, and it's more affected by the people around you and your environment and the transits and your definition. So you've got gate 12 defined. So
that makes sense.
yes, so your familiarity will lie in the keynote, you know, in terms of communication manifestation will lie in gate 12 and the meaning of gate 12. But the meanings of the gates too, if you start to explore it, they're very, very brief keynotes. And it's like, it becomes like a meditation. I've read all of them so many times. And I still am learning more about them because it's also all about your own life experiences and how you've experienced your life, emotions, you know, things that have happened to you, or, you know, what your direction is now. And so it's different for everybody still.
Does this make sense? There are times that I can express, and it has been commented on by friends, there are times I can express myself very fluently, no problem. And there are other days where nothing comes out.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense, especially with an undefined throat.
Yeah.
And you'll probably find keys to that. And if you look at gates 62 and 63, so you can see on the other side of the Ajna Center defined are 17 and 43. So you are longing for whatever those channels to be connected. So I would look up those two gates too, and I'm sure they will tell you lots and lots about yourself.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I had attempted to figure my design by myself, going back I think it was 88 days or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was off by like 3 days or something. But with this IHD website, I set up my design date into my astrology software, and I come up with, so my moon natally is 19 Cancer, and this gives me an ascendant of 20 Cancer, and it puts my sun at 8 Cancer, and this makes more sense. This makes a lot of sense.
Really?
Yeah, it also puts my midheaven at 0 Aries, which also makes a lot of sense. This is very cool. Thank you.
Right? No, you're welcome. Fascinating, right? And
Yeah,
I'm sure too, like, you know, if you know, as a group, you know, we all learned about this, say, however many years ago before, you know, we start our awakening process, that 88 days, that's our unconscious. And those aren't things you really start to learn about yourself until you're older, through your life experiences, through your awakening process and all of that.
Yeah. Oh, you brought so much. I mean, I know a lot about this, but you brought so much.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'm so happy I was finally able to, you know, participate in a way where I'm teaching some information. It's been wildly clear for me, and still learning every day. Thanks, you guys.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks from all of us. And
Awesome.
Yeah, so
Thank you all. Good night.
okay, good night, everyone. Thanks,
Thank
Amanda.
you. Bye.
Bye.